Chapter 11, Origami Yoda and the Cheeto Hog, and this is about Quavondo. Origami Yoda helped me a lot, even though Dwight didn't want him to. I went up to Dwight and said, "I need Yoda's advice," and Dwight said, "Go away, Cheeto Hog." The whole Cheeto Hog thing was what I needed Yoda's advice about in the first place. What happened was, the 6th grade went on this field trip to the zoo, and we saw this vending machine next to the snack bar up near the buffalo. Mr. Howell had told us we weren't allowed anything from the refreshment stands or the ice cream carts, but he hadn't said anything about the vending machines. So, we all ran over to the machine, and I got there first. The bags of snacks cost $2 each. These were tiny little bags that usually cost maybe 75 cents at the Quick Pick. But I had money that my mum had given me for the trip, so I shoved it in fast before somebody could push me out of the way. Right then, as soon as my second dollar went in, Mr. Howell comes over and starts shouting at us. Basically, he told us that we should have known that he meant we couldn't get stuff from the vending machines either. How was I supposed to know that? Everybody started grumbling, but at least they hadn't lost $2 in the machine. "But, Mr. Howell," I said, "I already put $2 whole in, and I haven't pushed the button yet." "Good grief," said Mr. Howell. "Can you push the coin return button, Quavondo?" I pushed it and nothing happened. Everybody was standing around watching all this. By the way, Harvey and Tommy and Tater Tot and just about every boy in my class. "All right," groaned Mr. Howell, "go ahead and get something, Quavondo, but that's it. Nobody else. I mean it. This is a big waste of money." So I pushed the button for a bag of Cheetos, and the bag came out, and I picked it up, and it felt like there was almost nothing in it. It was even smaller than the 75-cent bags. So I turned round, and there's half the class wanting me to share my Cheetos. Look, I wouldn't have minded sharing with one person, but there probably weren't enough Cheetos to even give everybody one, and I was hungry. So that's when things got nasty, and people started grabbing at them, and I ended up stuffing them in my mouth. And then I started to choke on them, and Harvey said, "Serves you right, Cheeto Hog." And everybody laughed. And instead of stopping them, Mr. Howell just said, "That's why I didn't want people buying food." Well, if he had said that in the first place, maybe I wouldn't have wasted $2 and practically choked to death. So, ever since then, people have been real mean to me and keep calling me Cheeto Hog. And one day, during math, I needed to borrow an eraser, and no one would lend me one until Mr. Howell forced Kellen to give me one. So obviously, I was getting tired of all that, and I had heard about how Yoda helped Mike stop being a softball crybaby, so I figured I would ask for advice, but Dwight wouldn't let me. "Oh nay, away, ito che, og hey," he said. "Come on, Dwight, that's what I need to ask Yoda about." "Or get it, Faye," he said. But then something really scary happened. His right hand shot up in the air, and Yoda's puppet was on one finger. "Cheetos for everyone you must buy," said Dwight in his Yoda voice. And then he put his hand over his own mouth, but he kept on trying to talk. "Assembly during tomorrow will be," he mumbled through the hand. "Then the Cheetos give you must. Big bags must they be." "But I can't bring Cheetos into assembly. You know the rule about food in the gym. I'll get in huge trouble." "Better even," squawked Yoda. "Trouble better is." At this point, Dwight, still covering his mouth and still talking as Yoda, put his coat over his head and crawled under the lunch table. Everybody was looking, of course. "But I can't do that," I said to Tommy and Kellen, who were sitting right there, and they said, "Shut up, Cheeto Hog." Well, that night my older brother gave me a ride down Route 24 to the Food Lion in Vinton. There was no way I was going to buy a bag of Cheetos for everyone in school, but I found out that there were 116 kids in the 6th grade, and that sounded possible. At Food Lion, they have 12 packs of 3-ounce Cheeto bags for $5.99. So I bought 10 of these packs. to get 120 bags. That cost $59.90 plus tax, which was $3.58. So the whole thing cost me $63.48. Luckily, I had $50 my grandmother had sent me for my birthday, and the rest I borrowed from my brother. The next morning, I crammed most of the Cheeto bags into my backpack, and an old Elmo backpack I used to use. I had to leave all my books at home, and then I put on my winter coat and stuck the rest of the bags into all the different pockets. It was still a little chilly outside, so I didn't look too crazy, I hope. As soon as I got to school, I crammed it all in my locker. Yoda had been right about there being an assembly. It was Mr. Good Clean Fun. Mr. Good Clean Fun comes to our school every couple of months to talk about how we should wash our hands after using the bathroom and taking a bath and things like that. His puppet is a singing monk. Mr. Good Clean Fun does his show for one grade at a time, and us 6th graders weren't having our assembly until 1:30, the beginning of 7th period. Now, remember that everybody had heard Dwight or Yoda the day before at lunch, so everybody knew what I was doing, and they asked me about it all day long. "You really brought the Cheetos, Covando?" "I don't believe it," said Tater Tot. "It was working already. He called me by my name, not Cheeto Hog." This is Mr. Good Clean Fun. "Yeah, shh, don't tell Miss Toner." "No problem. Give him here." "No, I have to wait until the assembly." "Why?" he asked. "Yoda said so," I said. "Oh yeah," he said. "I promised everybody that they would get their Cheetos. I wasn't sure I was going to give them out because I knew any of my teachers, especially Mr. Howell or Miss Toner, would stop me if they saw me with them. So I asked Origami Yoda. He told me. Speed you must have." Dwight told me that I could give him his bag of Cheetos right then, but I told him what I told everybody else. Yoda said to wait. So when the bell rang at the end of the 6th period, I just jumped up and ran without waiting to be dismissed. Some of the other kids in the class started running after me, and when the kids from other classes saw us running through the hall, they started running too, so they wouldn't miss out on the Cheetos. Unfortunately, Mr. Howell saw us when we ran by his classroom. "We don't run to assembly," he shouted. I had secretly left my locker unlocked, so all I had to do was grab the backpack and my coat and keep running. Some of the boys tried to grab them, but I shouted, "No, Yoda said to wait for the assembly." We burst into the gym, and then the feeding frenzy started. I tried to hand out the bags one at a time, but the kids just started pushing and grabbing so much I gave up. "Just one," I had to keep shouting. "There's one bag for everybody." At one point, I looked up and saw that Mr. Good Clean Fun was standing on the stage with his monkey just staring at us. By the time Mrs. Howell got there, everybody had a bag and was pigging out. "What the heck is going on here? Covando, did you do this? What's the deal with you and Cheetos?" "All right, you go to the office and I'll be down later to discuss this with Principal Rabsky and write up your in-school suspension letter." Miss Toner got there next, and she blew her whistle and shouted, "The rest of you, throw those bags away. I mean it. And don't try stuffing the whole bag in your shirt. Harvey, I can see it. I want those bags in the trash now." So I spent the rest of the day in the office. Principal Rabsky told me that I had embarrassed the school and insulted Mr. Good Clean Fun. She wrote a note that I had to take home to get signed by my parents, and I had to write a 5-page report about nutrition and a letter of apology to Mr. Good Clean Fun. I heard later that most of the Cheetos did get thrown away, so that was 63 bucks worth of Cheetos wasted. But it was all worth it because almost nobody ever calls me Cheeto Hog anymore. Harvey's comment. "As far as I can see, all the story proves is that Dwight is crazy as a bald gorilla. I was there when he was doing that covering his mouth thing, and it was totally embarrassing. Why does he have to sit at our table anyway? Why wouldn't they let me kick him out? Anyway, Dwight's advice had nothing to do with Yoda. He just wanted to get a free bag of Cheetos, which he got. I saw him eat the whole bag in about 1 second while Miss Toner was asking us to throw them away. If I had a giant mouth like he does, I wouldn't have to had to try to hide them in my shirt. Second, I have a message for Quavondo. Once a Cheeto hog, always a Cheeto hog. My comment. Harvey's all wrong. This was Yoda's best piece of advice yet. Quavondo went from being a hated Cheeto hog to being a hero. The fact that he got in trouble for trying to give away Cheetos made everybody like him even more, and Yoda predicted that too. Chapter 12, Origami Chewbacca and the Unsigned Suspension Slips. I've asked Dwight many times to write a chapter for this case file. He refuses to do it. But one day when I asked, he said, "You should put these in." And he pulled a bunch of papers out of his backpack. Most of them were just crumpled up, but one had been folded into what I think was an Origami Chewbacca. Either that or a gorilla with a tie on. It wasn't nearly as good as Origami Yoda. When I uncrumpled and unfolded the papers, I discovered they were notes that were sent home to be signed by his parents, which had never been signed. This one is a suspension slip for refusing to remove finger puppet during Pledge of Allegiance. A suspension slip for a student who was asked to work a math problem on the board and ate the chalk instead. This one is for refusal to remove a finger puppet during Standards of Learning testing. And this one is for the failure to return any of the previous in-school suspension slips with parent signature.